Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm delighted to have you here today. Today's presentation is titled Handling Deviations in Pharma Manufacturing, and it's my pleasure to guide you through this important topic. Over the next few minutes, we'll explore key strategies and best practices to effectively manage deviations in pharmaceutical production. So, let's get started and delve into how we can ensure quality and compliance in our manufacturing processes. So, what exactly is a deviation? Well, in the context of pharmaceutical manufacturing, a deviation is any departure from an approved procedure, specification, process parameter, or expected result. Essentially, if something doesn't go as planned or expected, that's a deviation. Let's look at some examples to make this clearer. It could be a temperature excursion during storage, meaning the temperature went outside the specified range. It might also be an equipment malfunction that affects the process, or an incorrect weighing of raw materials, which can compromise product quality. Sometimes, deviations happen because documentation is incomplete or missing, which can lead to issues down the line. The main goal when a deviation occurs is to identify what the issue is as quickly as possible. Once we know what went wrong, we need to investigate the root cause, understanding why it happened. And finally, it's crucial to implement corrective actions to fix the immediate problem and preventive actions to ensure it doesn't happen again. Understanding deviations is fundamental to maintaining quality and compliance in pharmaceutical manufacturing. It's all about catching issues early, learning from them, and continuously improving our processes. Let's talk about the regulatory requirements surrounding deviation management. As you can see, it's mandated by several key standards, including 21 CFR Part 211, EU GMP Part I Chapter 1, and ICH Q10. These regulations emphasize the importance of handling deviations properly to ensure product quality and compliance. The key expectations here are quite straightforward but critical. First, deviations must be thoroughly documented. This means capturing what happened, when, and under what circumstances. Second, it's essential to investigate the root cause of the deviation. Understanding why it occurred helps prevent recurrence and improves processes. Next, we need to assess the impact on product quality. Not all deviations are equal. Some might have little effect, while others could compromise safety or efficacy. That's why a careful assessment is necessary. Finally, if a deviation is identified, a corrective and preventive action, or CAPA, must be implemented. This helps us address the issue directly and prevent similar deviations in the future. In essence, these regulatory expectations guide us in maintaining high standards for quality and compliance throughout the product lifecycle. Let's take a closer look at the different types of deviations we might encounter. First, we have minor deviations. These are typically issues that don't impact the quality of the product at all. For example, a simple documentation entry error. It's something that can be corrected easily and doesn't pose a risk to safety or compliance. Next are major deviations. These are more serious because they could potentially affect the quality of the product or our compliance with good manufacturing practices. An example here would be an overdue calibration of equipment, which could impact process accuracy or consistency. Finally, we have critical deviations. These are the most serious because they directly impact product quality or patient safety. Think of a sterile filter integrity failure. This kind of deviation could compromise the safety of the final product. Recognizing these categories helps us prioritize our response and ensure we maintain the highest standards in our operations. Let's take a closer look at the common sources of deviations in pharmaceutical manufacturing. First, human error is a significant factor. Even with well-trained staff, mistakes can happen that impact the process. Next, equipment malfunction can cause deviations, such as breakdowns or failures that disrupt production. Raw material variation is another key source. No two batches are exactly the same, which can lead to inconsistencies. Process parameter failure refers to situations where critical variables like temperature or pressure drift outside their acceptable ranges. Environmental conditions, such as humidity or cleanliness, can also influence the process if not properly controlled. Lastly, SOP noncompliance is a common issue. When standard operating procedures aren't followed, deviations are more likely to occur. For example, a temperature excursion in cold storage might happen due to a chiller malfunction, illustrating how equipment failure directly impacts product quality. Recognizing these sources helps us better prevent and manage deviations throughout manufacturing. Now, let's take a closer look at the deviation management process. This is a typical workflow that helps us handle deviations systematically and effectively. It all begins with deviation identification, where we recognize that something isn't quite right. Once identified, we move to deviation reporting, ensuring that the issue is documented clearly and promptly. Next, we conduct an initial impact assessment to understand the potential consequences of the deviation. This step helps us determine the urgency and the scope of the investigation needed. Speaking of which, investigation follows, where we gather all relevant information to understand what caused the deviation. From there, we focus on root cause identification, drilling down to the fundamental reason behind the issue. Once we've pinpointed the cause, we implement CAPA, corrective and preventive actions, to address and prevent recurrence of similar deviations. Finally, we close the deviation once all corrective actions are verified and completed. It's important to note that this entire process aligns with principles from ICH-Q9, which emphasizes a risk-based approach and continuous improvement in quality management. By following this structured workflow, we ensure that deviations are managed consistently, effectively, and in compliance with regulatory expectations. When a deviation occurs, the first thing you need to do is immediately inform your supervisor. It's crucial to communicate quickly so we can address the issue promptly. Next, you should record the deviation on the designated deviation form, making sure all details are accurate. If the deviation poses a risk to product quality, you must stop the process right away to prevent any further issues. The information we capture includes the date and time when the deviation happened, the batch number involved, and the equipment that was being used. It's also important to provide a clear description of what the deviation was. Remember, documenting deviations thoroughly helps us understand what went wrong, learn from it, and improve our processes. This is all part of maintaining high quality and safety standards throughout our operations. Let's take a closer look at impact assessment. When we talk about initial impact assessment, we're really focusing on evaluating several key areas. First, product quality impact, understanding how a deviation might affect the final product's quality. Next is patient safety risk, ensuring that any issues don't compromise safety. Then, regulatory compliance impact, making sure we're still meeting all necessary standards and regulations. Finally, we assess whether there's a need for batch rejection or reprocessing to address the deviation. To make this clearer, let's look at an example. Suppose the deviation is that the granulation temperature exceeded the set limit. Our assessment would involve evaluating how this affects the batch quality, maybe conducting additional testing to confirm the product's integrity. The goal here is to quickly determine the severity of the issue and decide on the appropriate course of action, all while keeping patient safety and regulatory standards at the forefront. This step is crucial because it helps us manage issues proactively and maintain the overall quality and safety of our products. Now, let's talk about root cause investigation. The main goal here is to understand why a deviation occurred in the first place. It's not just about identifying what went wrong, but really digging into the underlying reasons behind the issue. To do this effectively, we use a set of common tools. One of these is the 5 why analysis, which involves asking why multiple times until we reach the core cause. Then there's the fishbone, or Ishikawa diagram, which helps us visualize all possible contributing factors in a structured way. Fault tree analysis is another tool that allows us to trace back the chain of events leading to the deviation. And don't forget risk assessment, which helps us evaluate the severity and likelihood of potential causes. For example, imagine we have a deviation where an incorrect API quantity was used. The root cause in that case might be that the operator misread the weighing instructions. Recognizing this helps us target specific areas for improvement, like training or process clarification. Overall, root cause investigation is about moving beyond surface issues to truly understand and fix the underlying problems, ensuring we prevent similar deviations in the future. Let's take a closer look at the root cause categories we often encounter. First, under man, we have issues like training deficiencies and operator errors. These are human factors that can significantly impact the process if not properly addressed. Next, we look at machine, where equipment failures can cause unexpected disruptions. Proper maintenance and regular inspections are key here. Moving on to method, ambiguities in standard operating procedures or SOPs can lead to inconsistencies, so clarity and thoroughness in procedures are essential. Then, material refers to raw material defects, which can compromise quality right from the start. Lastly, environment covers factors like temperature or humidity issues, which can subtly but critically affect the process. Recognizing these categories helps us systematically identify and address the root causes of problems, ultimately improving overall quality and efficiency. Now that we've identified the root cause of the issue, the next crucial step is implementing corrective and preventive actions, or CAPA for short. Corrective action focuses on fixing the immediate problem to stop it from continuing or causing further issues. Preventive action, on the other hand, is about looking ahead, finding ways to prevent the problem from happening again in the future. Let's take a simple example. Suppose there's a deviation because an incorrect label was applied. To address this, the CAPA process might involve retraining the operator who applied the label, updating the labeling standard operating procedure to clarify the process, and even implementing a barcode verification system to catch errors before they reach the product. The key takeaway here is that CAPA isn't just about fixing what went wrong. It's about making systemic changes to prevent similar issues down the line. This approach ties into the overall theme of continuous improvement and quality assurance that runs throughout our process. Let's look at this case study example to understand how deviations are handled in practice. During tablet compression, we noticed that the compression force exceeded the validated limit, which is a clear deviation from our process parameters. Our investigation revealed that the root cause was a malfunction in the equipment pressure sensor, which was not providing accurate readings. Additionally, we found that the calibration of that sensor was overdue, meaning it hadn't been checked or adjusted as scheduled. This highlights the importance of regular calibration and equipment maintenance, as these are critical to ensuring reliable process control. In terms of impact, we needed to evaluate how this deviation might affect the batch quality, so we assessed parameters like batch hardness and dissolution. We also performed additional testing to confirm that the batch still meets quality specifications. As part of our corrective and preventive actions, CAPA, we replaced the faulty sensor and revised the calibration schedule to prevent this issue from recurring. This example underscores the importance of proactive equipment management and thorough investigation to maintain product quality and compliance throughout the manufacturing process. Let's talk about the documentation requirements for deviations. When a deviation occurs, it's essential to record specific information to ensure proper tracking and resolution. First, you need to include a deviation number. This helps us uniquely identify each case. Next, a clear description of the deviation itself is necessary so everyone understands what happened. It's also crucial to perform and document a root cause analysis to understand why the deviation occurred. Along with that, an impact assessment should be done to evaluate how the deviation affects product quality, safety, or compliance. Then, you'll need to provide CAPA, or corrective and preventive actions details, outlining what will be done to address the issue and prevent recurrence. Approval by QA is the final step. No deviation record is complete without their sign-off to ensure proper oversight. And of course, all these records must be retained following GMP documentation practices. This means they should be properly stored, organized, and accessible for audits or reviews. So, in summary, thorough documentation is vital for compliance, quality assurance, and continuous improvement. Every detail counts in maintaining the integrity of our processes and products. Let's take a closer look at some common regulatory observations. Regulators often point out issues like incomplete deviation investigations, which means that investigations into deviations aren't fully thorough or conclusive. They also notice when root causes aren't clearly identified, making it hard to address the underlying problem. Another frequent concern is repeated deviations occurring without proper corrective and preventive actions, or CAPA, in place, indicating that issues aren't being effectively resolved. Additionally, delayed closure of deviations is a red flag, as it suggests a lack of timely investigation and resolution. Regulators consistently emphasize the importance of conducting investigations that are both timely and scientifically justified. This means that investigations should be prompt, based on solid scientific reasoning, and thoroughly documented. Connecting this to our overall theme, it highlights how a proactive and rigorous approach to deviations not only ensures compliance, but also enhances product quality and patient safety. Addressing these common observations helps us stay aligned with regulatory expectations and maintain high standards in our operations. Let's wrap up with the conclusion. Deviation handling really is a critical part of the pharmaceutical quality system. It's essential because how we manage deviations directly impacts product quality, patient safety, and regulatory compliance. The key success factors here are immediate reporting, which means catching issues as soon as they happen, thorough investigation to understand the root cause, effective CAPA or corrective and preventive actions to fix problems and prevent recurrence, and strong documentation, ensuring everything is properly recorded and traceable. When we manage deviations effectively, we not only uphold high standards of quality, but also protect patients and stay compliant with regulations. Remember, strong deviation management isn't just about fixing problems. It's about building a reliable, safe, and compliant system that supports our entire mission in pharmaceutical manufacturing. For further support, please feel free to contact us. We're here to help you with any questions or additional information you might need. Don't hesitate to reach out. Your success is our priority. And with that, I want to sincerely thank you for your time and attention today. We appreciate your engagement and hope you found this presentation valuable. Thank you again.